Chapter 22. 9 days into our long march, or was it 10, I found myself walking next to another boy about my age. His face was red and his eyes were half shut, and he staggered with each step. He was about as close as a Mussulman as you can get without actually being one, without crumpling to the ground and not being able to get up again. He almost swayed into me once, so I picked up my pace and got ahead of him. I couldn't stop thinking about him, though. He reminded me of Fred, sick in his bed and not able to get up and work. Fred, who had been such a friend to me when I had so desperately needed one at Auschwitz. I kept looking back at the boy, watching him weave through the shuffling lines. Once he stumbled and fell, only climbing back to his feet after a struggle. Very soon now he would be at the back of the lines where the SS officers and their pistols waited. I couldn't help it. I had to go back to him. I slowed down until we were alongside each other. "Hey," I said. "Hey, you have to walk faster." The boy said nothing. There was no life in his eyes, no hint that he had even heard me. I grabbed his arm. "Hey, listen to me. Just one more day. Yes? You can make it one more day. Then you can sleep tonight, and tomorrow start fresh. You just have to keep walking." The boy tripped and stumbled into me, and I caught him. I propped him up under his shoulder, letting him lean on me, but he never broke away. Perhaps his body knew that if he let go he would fall again. He slumped against me, and suddenly I was carrying half the boy's weight. He wasn't really heavy, none of us were any more, but was already so weak and tired from the march, and from eating my bread sparingly, that I barely had enough strength to carry myself. Within just a few meters I stumbled under the weight of him, but I didn't let go. What was I doing? Had I gone crazy? Uncle Moshe would be scolding me right now. I could hear his voice. "We only have one purpose now: survive. Survive at all costs, Yannick." Each step I took was harder than the last. Why was I wasting my energy carrying along a sick boy who would most likely be dead before we got to Sachsenhausen? I hadn't thought this through, and now here I was holding the boy up. I should let him go, I thought over and over. Let him make his own way. I should save myself. That's how you survived the camps. You saved yourself. No one else was going to do it for you. But this boy had a face. He had a name too, though I didn't know it. He had a mother and a father, probably dead now, but he had a family, a home somewhere. He could have been me. He could have been Yannick Gruner, son of Oscar and Mina, of 20 Krakowska Street, Bodgozi, Krakow. But if it were me, wouldn't I want someone to help me? Even if I was out of my mind with hunger and exhaustion, wouldn't I want the boy who was helping me to stay there under my arm, to help me just a little farther along the way? Surely somebody else had to feel the same way, and if I could find someone to help me, if we shared the load, we could all make it, even this nameless boy. "Please," I said to the man nearest me, "please help me." The man heard me, but he wouldn't look at me. Instead, he picked up his pace and left us behind. "Please help me carry him," I begged another man. "Don't be a fool," the man said. He, too, moved away. "Leave him," another prisoner told me. "He's going to die anyway," said another. "Let him go, or he'll take you with him." Crack! I jumped. Somewhere behind us, another prisoner had fallen too far behind, and the Nazis had shot him. They would shoot me too if we fell behind, even though I wasn't the sick one. Why wouldn't someone help us? It didn't have to be this way. Every man for himself. If we all helped one another, if we became one another's families now, when all of us real families had been taken from us, we too could be stronger. More of us could survive, but too many of them thought like Uncle Moshe. Too many of them would only look out for themselves. I wanted to yell at them, argue with them, but I was too tired. It wouldn't do any good anyway. I was right, but so were they, in their way. The only person you could trust in the camps was yourself. I should never have helped that boy. I knew that, but now that I was helping him, I refused to let him go. I was becoming stubborn now that I was 16. I walked along, giving the nameless boy all the energy I could spare. I longed to have a bite of my bread, but it was tucked into the waistband of my pants behind my back, and I couldn't reach it and carry the boy at the same time. I would have to wait for nightfall and our scheduled stop before I could eat again. It was better that way, I figured. My bread would last longer, so long as I survived to eat it. But as we walked along, step after step, kilometer after kilometer, my stomach began to gnaw away at itself. I was just so hungry. Just a bite of bread, just a pinch. I could quiet my aching stomach for a few more hours. The only way to eat was to let go of the boy, though, and we were already near the back of the lines. I couldn't stop, but I was so hungry I cried. The gray clouds in the sky meant more snow, but they also meant that night would come earlier, and maybe an earlier end to the day's marching. Just a little farther, I told myself. One more step, and then another. And if I fell, it would be hard for me to get up again, and impossible for me to lift the boy. If I dropped him now, all this torture would have been for nothing, and that seemed worse than having to help him to begin with. But I wasn't going to make it to nightfall, not even with the gray clouds overhead. Just when I thought I couldn't take another step, my load lightened. Another prisoner stepped in to take the boy's other arm. He was an old man with sunken, bloodshot eyes, deep cracks in his face, and a grizzled beard. He looked like I might be carrying him next. "I can't walk so well myself," he rasped, "but I'll help you the rest of the way today." Tears streamed down my face. I should have said thank you, but I was too tired to speak. The old man seemed to understand. "Keep walking," he told me. We walked along in silence the rest of the evening, the only sound the crunch of the frozen mud beneath our feet and the cracks of the capos' whips. I tried to block out everything else and focus on putting one foot in front of another, but it was a struggle to carry the boy, but else with someone else's help I was rejuvenated. The darkness had long since fallen when we reached the top of the hill and found no barn or house in sight. The guard stopped us and told us the frozen ground would once again be our bed. None of us complained. My companion and I dropped the boy to the ground as quickly as we could, and before I could thank him, he disappeared into the crowd of prisoners huddling together for warmth as they slept. I stood over the boy a moment longer, wondering what his name was and if he would even survive the night. His breath was ragged and his body barely moved. Had I used up all my energy for nothing? Before I could sleep, I had to eat. I reached for what was left of the half loaf of bread tucked in my pants, but it wasn't there. In a panic, I patted all around my waistline, even checking to see if it had slid down inside my pants. I was so cold and my pants were so big I might not have noticed, but there was nothing there. My bread was gone. It must have slid out while I was carrying the boy and I hadn't noticed. Half of my food lost. Who knew how much longer we would be walking? I fell to my knees, sobbing. Without food, I would never survive. I looked down at the nameless boy again, and my hands made fists. I wanted to hit him. It was all his fault. I never would have wasted all that energy. I never would have lost my food if it wasn't for him. But I pounded my own bony legs instead. It wasn't the boy's fault, it was mine, and I knew it. And then I saw it. A lump in the boy's pocket, what was left of his bread. It was as much as I'd lost, maybe more. I reached a hand out to take the bread from the boy's pocket, but stopped. Had it come to this? Was I so desperate to survive that I would steal bread from a sick boy? I quickly moved behind the boy and nestled in close, so we could keep each other warm in the night. But as I lay there under the starless black sky, my stomach moaning, or was it me moaning? All I could think about was that bit of bread. So little I might have left it on my plate after dinner once, a long time ago, before the war. But now, that little piece of bread was everything. It was the difference between life and death. "He's sick," I told myself. "He's mostly dead already. He's a Mussulman. In the morning he won't be able to get up and they'll shoot him where he lies. He doesn't need that bread. It would probably make him sick to eat it now anyway. If I take it, at least one of us will survive. Face it," I told myself. "He'll be dead by morning." Still, I couldn't take it. Not when I could feel him breathing, not when I could feel his heart beating in his bony chest. He might die by morning, and he probably would. But I could wait until then. I would not steal bread from another living prisoner. Instead, I closed my eyes and hoped that sleep would at least let me forget about my hunger for a few hours. It was my stomach that woke me the next morning, more than the light. My first thought was the boy's bread, but the rise and the fall of the boy's chest told me he hadn't died in the night. He was still alive. How was that possible? And not only was he alive, but his breath was much less shallow. There was color in his face again, too. The sleep had done him what I promised it would, and it had given him the rest he needed to face a new day of marching. I shook in anger and frustration. He was supposed to die. I needed him to die so I could have his bread. I closed my eyes. What was I thinking? I wouldn't steal bread from a living boy, but I would wish death on him so I could take it without guilt. What were the camps doing to me? What had the Nazis turned me into? Faced with two evils, stealing from a living boy or wishing him dead to take his food guilt-free, I realized I could more easily have the sin of stealing on my conscience. I needed that bread to live, and I was going to take it. The boy owed me after all. He was only alive because I helped him. Slowly, my hand shaking, I reached around the nameless boy for the bread sticking out of his pocket. I touched it. I had it in my fingers when the boy's eyes opened wide and he stirred. "Hey, what are you doing?" he said. I yanked my hand back. "Nothing. I was trying to see if you were still alive." The boy pushed the bread farther down into his pocket. "Well, I am," the boy told me. He pushed himself to his feet. "Wait," I said. "I'm the one who helped you yesterday," I started to say, but without so much as a thank you, the boy staggered away to join the march. I would have cried again, but I was too tired. A capo came around, kicking the last of us still on the ground, and I picked myself up. I wasn't a Mussulman. I might be starving, and I might be that nameless boy the others saw staggering through the ranks by midday, but I wasn't dead yet. My name is Yannick, and I was still going to survive.